A big warm welcome to French Day at Brooklands 2024. We're gradually getting you all in and parked up. It is going to be hot today. Please make sure you do have enough water. If you've got a hat, please wear it. And don't forget the sunscreen. That way we'll all go home happy, and our lovely medic who's parked over by the average shed won't have too much work on their hands today. We've got citrons in front of the paddock. We have the pre-war Delage are by the memorial railings. That's just to the right if you're in the driver's seat of the Alpines. The Alpines are on the lower finishing straight. We've got various cars up by the railings as well, and the lower finishing straight.
Hello and welcome back to another Mark on Motoring video. This is the second year of Brooklands French Day. This time I actually came down and stayed overnight, so I managed to get here bright and early. One of the first people I bumped into this morning is Tim. Now, Tim, you've got this rather fascinating A110 behind us, and
yes.
It's got quite an interesting history, this vehicle.
Yes, this is a 1970 1600S, one of the first ones. That was the first year they were built as a 1600S. And in 1971, it was bought for a woman called Christine Dacremont. She's a French rally driver.
Okay.
And it was the first one she owned, the first one she rallied, the first one she scored points in, and in 1971 she was French Women's Rally Champion.
Okay.
But she's also bigger than me, and when she got into the car for the first time again, she took hold of the steering wheel and said, "This is an old friend." I put this steering wheel on this car because the original steering wheel was too big and she just couldn't get her knees in.
Right.
So that was very, but she was extremely fast.
Yeah.
Friend of Michel Mouton, and she was in the Septuagint team for quite a while.
Excellent. Obviously you were saying this car is homologated at 600 and odd kilos, is it?
Yes. Originally this was a Group 3 demonstrator car for Alpine, and it's a 1600S homologated at 650 kilograms.
Blimey.
And the standard horsepower out of them was 120.
Yeah.
But this one's got a bit more than that.
Right, I see.
So it's quite good. So they're quite quick. They're geared at the moment for about standard gearbox for 130 miles an hour.
Right, I see.
But they were just built for two people to go rallying in.
Yep.
So there's no space behind the front seats for luggage, really.
Yeah.
But and that's what they were built for.
Yeah, I mean, it's hardly surprising, is it, Tim, that last year I think one of the quickest cars up this hill was indeed one of these A110s. They really do move.
They're quite quick off the mark because, well, the company was started in 1955 in Dieppe in France by Jean Redelet. And he would then gradually improve the cars until this shape of car, the 110, A110, came out in the early 60s. And there are actually 14 different models of this car.
Right.
Starting from about 620 kilograms and going up to 800.
Right.
With different engines and gearboxes, and just as they progress through the years.
Yeah.
And in 1971, Alpine won the European Championship for makes. And then in 1973, they won the first World Rally Championship.
Right.
Using the 110. And their main competitors, of course, were Ford and Porsche and people like that. But that's what they were intended for, so they come alive in the mountains.
Yeah, I can imagine they do. And I expect whichever version of the 110 or any of the other derivatives that you do happen to own, they're probably all a great drive.
Oh, they are. They're really, really good. But this particular model, they built about 600.
Okay.
But in France, in total of all cars of this shape, they built just under 8,000.
Right, which isn't bad actually for obviously the facilities in Dieppe. It's not going to be some big automated factory, is it?
No, it wasn't. They were all built by hand.
Yeah.
Each one was built by 4 people.
Yeah.
And so they're built in moulds that were made by hand. So when you look at them, maybe the front wheel arches aren't quite the same because one's on the left and one's on the right, and they were just built by hand.
All right. So very interesting. Well, that's excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Tim, and I hope you enjoy your day here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that was actually a lot easier than I expected fitting in there. Yeah, I've got in cars that have been a lot more difficult. For example, the Volvo P1800 that I struggled getting in and out of a few years ago. As I said, this one has got a much smaller steering wheel in. Yeah, there's headroom actually not bad as well. I've probably got an inch or so of clearance, which again for a car of this age and type isn't always the case. Gear lever, again, really close to the steering wheel here. Again, I can touch both of those with one hand, which are quite good. Instruments, even though we've got this smaller steering wheel, the instruments are fairly visible. There's only sort of the top segment to the right side of the speedometer that's slightly obscured, so that's pretty impressive. Another interesting thing about this car is, if ever you've played Gran Turismo and you've driven the A110 in Gran Turismo, this very car was used in the shots for that, which I find quite fascinating that this were done. So there's actually a sheet in here with photos showing the car in the chamber where they sort of do all the electronic video mapping or whatever it is they do. It's all a bit technical. But yeah, it was this exact vehicle. So it really is a piece of history we sat in here. Right, now, I suppose I better try and figure how to get myself out. So hopefully the journey getting out will be as dignified as the journey getting in.
We are open for registration for test hill. That is those of you who would wish to go up our wonderful hill, which obviously is the centrepiece of this site now, something everybody tries to do when they come here. They want to go on the hill, take the car up there. It's not competitive, it's just a nice little procession just to show off as you go up. So if you'd like to take part, you will need to sign on in the Napier room, and that is the one at the top of the white wooden staircase, just to the right of the main red brick part of the clubhouse. You go up there and in the double doors, and then Mary will be waiting there to sign you on.
The ROC club have turned out with a nice selection of cars as always, from the sort of 1980s through to the early 2000s. You can check out the Renault Owners Club online either through the website or on the Facebook page. One of the cars here that I was really keen to see today is this Renault 5 or Super Sank. It's the second generation Renault 5. The reason I want to see this one in particular though is it's a pre-facelift car. Now it's got a private registration on, so I'm not 100% on the year, but basically this version ran from around 84 to about 1987. I think this could be a sort of 86-ish car. It's a TL Rio. I can't remember what years the Rio version was in production for. So TLs, they had an 1108cc engine, typically with a 4 or 5 speed gearbox. But the Rio got a few extra things, so it would have had some wheel trims and some decals, which are sadly missing off this particular example. But it has got the bespoke Rio upholstery in there with the red piping round, so that's quite interesting to see. We've got a sunroof on this car as well, which again I think were part of that Rio specification. My dad actually had a Renault 5 of this vintage in this exact same colour of red as well, but his was a 956cc TC model, which was the base car in this country. Another car here that I've been quite keen to see is a Renault 9. This particular Renault 9 GTL is one of the facelift cars owned by Simon. Simon did actually bring this vehicle to a couple of other events, Rustyville and Festival of the Unexceptional, and I did photograph the car but didn't manage to insert it into any videos. So yeah, great to see this one here as well. I love this shade of blue, it looks really smart on this car. The GTLs were the 1397cc engine, which went into quite a few Renaults of the era. We've even got a very period looking mobile phone in there, which is quite a unique feature. It's something like that would have been very expensive, so it's unusual to see something like that in a car of this ilk. Simon's also got a very period cassette holder on the dashboard as well, which is something else I like. I think often it's nice to see the cars, but when you see some of the period accessories, it brings back so many memories of a bygone era. We've actually got two Renault 5s here today as well. This F registered one, same year of registration as the 1988 TL that I had as a first car. This would actually have been the model above the one I had though. This is a GTS. So we've got things like this chrome pinstripe in here, this black grille there with the chrome around again. better seating as well than what my car had, a little bit posher. Centre air vents, again, things we would take for granted now that weren't standard. It even had an intermittent setting for the windscreen wipers, which my car sadly did not have. Big difference though was the engine. 1397cc in this car and a standard 5-speed gearbox. Again, these cars didn't weigh a lot, so that made for quite lively performance. This one is a 5-door, so we've got a slightly longer wheelbase, which actually does make it difficult to get these rain gutter ins for the 5-door cars, because again, plastic does crack with age, and I was told by an owner a few years ago, sourcing the gutter, plastic gutter coverings for these is very difficult for a 5-door car. This one's actually got a manual gearbox as well, which is nice. A lot of the ones that you do see now near this specification are quite often the Renault 5 automatic. We've even got a Mark II Clio here. Now this is quite a late Mark II Clio, as you can tell by the bumpers is sort of a third facelift. It's also got the rear bumper with the number plate set low, so it is a very, very late example. But what makes this car more interesting and unique than most is that it's a van derivative. I knew the van derivative existed, but to this day I've not actually physically seen one, so yeah, great to see this car here. It's nice to see our club secretary Rob's brought his Renault Aventime that he acquired not so long ago. These were really interesting cars and becoming quite desirable now for such a modern car. The total production of these was somewhere in the region of about 8,000, but for right-hand drive markets we're less than 500 cars, so quite a unicorn. That said, when they did a 20-year anniversary event for these cars, quite a significant number of these actually turned out, and as I say, these days they're a really, really sought after modern classic from Renault. And that's quite understandable really. I mean, where else are you ever going to see an MPV crossed with a pillarless coupe? Of course, we've got these doors as well with this strange sort of scissor mechanism that allows these big, huge, long doors to open a little bit wider so that you can still get in and out of the car, even in our rather restrictive car parking spaces that we have in the UK. Well, it's a pleasure to bump into an old friend from another event. Sheridan, you're here with quite a modern Renault, but a fairly unique one, I must say. So, what looks like a Megane CC, but what marks this one out from any other Megane CC?
It's a limited edition. It was called a Floride. There are only 150 done in the UK in 2011 and 2012. Occasionally you get a 13 reg. It's a 1.4 TCE, 1.4 petrol turbo engine only, with 130 brake horse.
Now, I seem to recall from when we spoke last year, tracking this vehicle down was no easy task, was it?
Not at all. It took me about 6-7 months. They very rarely come up for sale. And the issue being that I saw this one and called immediately to the seller, and we got on okay, as I thought, and I called a couple of days later, and he wouldn't sell it to me. They changed their mind. So it took me about a month, and I, cajoling, but finally I managed to convince the seller's lady that I was the right person to own their car. And I had to go up north to near Stockport, near Manchester. I'm down south basically, twice, once to view the car, once to get it.
Yeah.
But I'm so pleased I did. Very, very good.
Yeah. Specification wise then, so we've got quite a unique, we've got sort of this off-white paint colour, haven't we? Interior, I mean, the interior is a really standout part of this car, isn't it?
It's cream with a dark red and cream leather. All 4 seats are leather. The 2 fronts are heated. It has aircon fitted as well, and the roof that is stowed in the boot by hydraulics comes up, and that's mainly glass. So you have a huge glass panel above you and a huge glass panel behind you. So you have the best of everything, and when the roof is up you can have it as a pillarless coupe, because all 4 windows go up or down with a touch of 1 button.
Excellent. Right, well, we're going to move on and have a look at some other vehicles. Just before I do, the Floride name, presumably that's a nod to the Renaults of old.
It certainly is. Again, the colour scheme as well, with the cream and red, is a direct reference to the original Florides in the 1960s, with Brigitte Bardot advertising them.
Fantastic. Well, as it happens, we've got, I'm with the Renault Owners Club today. We've got a nice selection of cars here. We've also got the Renault Classic Car Club here as well, so I am going to take a wander over there a little bit later on. And I think from memory, I think there is actually a Floride over there, so we'll have a look at that one as well. Right, that's great, Sheridan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parr.
Hope that you've enjoyed the show so far. Sit tight because we've still got plenty more to come. In the meantime, have you considered becoming a Mark on Motoring channel member and join the likes of Scottish Car Enthusiast and Trains TV and Dinosaur Dad, who are currently enjoying early access to some of my car review videos, such as the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray and the Mazda MX-5 RF. There'll also be some behind the scenes content coming through soon as well. In the meantime, back to today's video. I found my way over to the Renault Classic Car Club section, another club of which I'm a member. They've got quite an interesting collection of cars here. Obviously behind me we've got a Alpine A610, which were a rare car even in the day. Another really interesting rare car though is this Renault 5. Now, on occasion I have seen Renault 5 Turbo 2s, which again are not the kind of thing you see every day, but this particular car, even rarer still because this is an earlier one. This is a Turbo 1. Turbo 1's obviously got that crazier looking dashboard, so this one's got the red dash, and then you've got the instrument binnacle with all the little pods with the round instruments in. Really, really cool. There are also a lot of aluminium body parts on the Turbo 1s as well. These were the ones that were basically homologated for the for rallying, and quite a crazy thing as well. 1.4 litre 8-valve pushrod engine situated behind the front seats, driving the rear wheels. As I say, completely mad cars, and yeah, Ragnarok could certainly throw one of these around. It's really fantastic to see this one here, and obviously in this blue and red Phillips livery as well, which is one of the colour schemes I do remember having seen in pictures and things in years past. We've also got a Clio 16 valve back there. I think I looked at that car here last year, but always nice to see that again because they were overshadowed very much by the Williams. Renault 21, nice to see this car back on the road. This is actually 1721cc and it's the 5-door hatchback version, and probably one of the first to actually have fuel injection. Recently this car ended up off the road. Our sort of club resident mechanic Paul Cunningham has worked his magic, and this car lives again, so it's really, really nice to see that back on the road. Renault 8 again, a couple of Renault 8s here, always popular at these events, and obviously Gordinis in particular are quite sought after these days. Renault 16 back there, again great car, front mid-mounted engine. Again, you've got that sort of weird trick rear suspension which gives you a longer wheelbase on one side of the car than what you've got on the other. But yeah, in fact I think they were actually the first hatchback as well, so definitely a piece of history there. I actually thought we had a classic Floride here, but actually it's Caravelles, and we've got 3 of them here today as well, in various specifications. They're fantastic looking cars. Personal favourite of mine always, well, the Renault 5 GT Turbo, isn't it? Obviously I grew up around these things, so yeah, it was always the dream car for me as a child. Again, 1397cc engine, Garrett T2 turbocharger on these post-facelift cars with about 120 horsepower, and as I say, back in the day that made this a seriously quick car. It was certainly a lot more performance than you would have got, say, from an XR2 or a Nova GTE. I think the only thing that could really compete would have been the 205 GTI. There's actually another Renault 5 behind there as well, a Campus Prima with the 1390cc fuel injected engine, which again is a car quite close to my heart because my dad had a couple of those cars, which were the run-out models that we got in the UK up until 1996. Another Aventime here as well. Again, as I say, these are incredibly rare cars, but now they're getting quite sought after. This one is a slightly different spec to Rob's car we looked at, this one being an automatic. We've also got the beige leather inside this car as well, which with all this glass area and the panoramic roof makes this a really, really bright, spacious place to be. Bookmarked by a Renault Traffic camper there at the end, another Renault 8, Renault 4. I'm actually getting to a point in my life where the idea of owning a Renault 4 is becoming quite appealing. I think this would be the perfect car to do the school run and trips to the allotment. Well, maybe not this exact car because this one actually looks probably too nice, but there are still plenty of Renault 4s around the world, some of which look like they're just clinging on to life but that are used daily. In fact, there were even, I believe, a Renault 4 still entered in the Paris-Dakar this year, so quite remarkable. Again, loads of suspension travel on these cars, front mounted engine, up to 1108s. I know some of the earlier cars, I think the engines in the R3, I believe it was, got as small as 603cc, so yeah, quite utilitarian, but again, really fascinating cars. But we wouldn't have the Renault 4 without this. In the UK market, I believe this was sold as a Renault 750, and this is a right-hand drive car, but probably better known elsewhere as the 4CV. Yeah, these were actually the first post-war design from Renault, and I believe that when they moved on to the Renault 4, they simply moved the engine and gearbox assembly up to the front of the car, which is why you've got the engine sat behind the transmission. But yeah, fascinating cars, and it looks absolutely stunning, doesn't it? Now, we've actually got two Renaults here that of which the models appeared in a James Bond film, A View to a Kill with Roger Moore. Now, many people remember the Renault 11 because you can't mention a Renault 11 without people bringing up the one that ended up driving around Paris cut in half. Thankfully, the one here today is in one piece, and this is actually a three-door one in base model TC spec, but it's a really nice looking example. It's actually had some alloy wheels put on, but they are sort of period correct Renault alloy wheels, I believe. The car that you might have forgotten was in A View to a Kill, though, is a Renault Fuego. These were obviously Renault's sort of sporting coupe model of that era, based loosely on the Renault 18 sort of family saloon car that was out at the time. Now, this particular one is a GTS specification, so it's a sort of mid-spec car, 1600cc engine, and of course there was a turbo as well. This one has actually got alloy wheels from a higher spec car, and it's also got a lot of factory options, so it's got electric windows, front fog lights, and this folding fabric sunroof as well. Now, this particular car is owned by Brian Whiteside of the Renault Classic Car Club, and it's currently for sale as well, so by all means, if you're in the market for one of these cars and you really do want a genuine unicorn of a classic, I mean, you pull up at any classic car show in this car, I can pretty much guarantee you're not going to find another. I mean, I've been to numerous French car and Renault Club events. I've not seen another one of these over the last few years, so yeah, definitely an opportunity to own a very rare car. Again, if you haven't already done so, by all means do check out the Renault Classic Car Club as well. I will leave a link to their website in the video description, along with details of some other clubs such as the Renault Owners Club. Anyway, I really had better press on because I'm due in the briefing in 15 minutes for the hill ascent, and I've still got to have a look at some Citroens, Peugeots and Delage that are here, so we'd better crack on. One thing I want to note, because I very nearly missed this myself, Renault 10. These are actually so easy to miss because of how similar they look to the smaller Renault 8, and the actual midsection of these cars is the same. So if you've got a Renault 8 or a Renault 10, the doors are actually interchangeable on these models. I've got a beautiful selection of Citroens here today as well. I've just spotted a Citroen GS, that's the earlier version of that model, again with a really immaculate looking interior. Just reminds me of that CX Safari that I was looking at only a couple of months ago, that again looked like the interior had worn exceptionally well. So maybe there's something to be said about Citroens of that vintage, that 50 years on they still look this good. 2CVs, well, of course there's plenty of 2CVs because any Citroen event you're going to get a lot of 2CVs. Of course we've got a Charleston, which I think might be the one I saw here last year, Dolly, various other models. There is actually a very early Ripple bonnet as well, and it's one of the cars that's actually got the canvas roof that goes all the way over the rear screen, and the boot lid is actually canvas as well, so that must be a really early car. Probably one of my favourites is the Citroen SM. I mean, they're absolutely stunning. You've got that Maserati V6 surrounded by all those spheres in the glory. ID19, and then bookmarking them at the end, a Roma Home Citroen camper van. And let's face it, we've got to be honest, no matter what you're into, whether it be sports cars or luxury cars, I think there comes a point in his life where we all fancy maybe having a motorhome to disappear off in at some point. And now we come to the point in my day where things took a little bit of a turn and didn't go entirely as planned. Just while I explain what happened, I'm going to insert some footage here of the 2023 Hill Test event. I was supposed to participate in this event in 2024, and I'd just returned from the driver's briefing, put the key in the ignition, turned the key, nothing happened. Very strange considering this car always starts on the button first time. It's got a good battery, it's had both a new starter motor and fuel pump in recent years, and is well serviced. Now, being part of an owners club, you get more than just a great magazine and the ability to display your vehicle with like-minded people at events such as this one. Now, I'm a member of both the Renault Owners Club and Renault Classic Car Club, and fortunately I had both Paul Cunningham and Jason Smith on hand, who certainly know their way around a vehicle engine bay. They were able to diagnose the issue as being a spade connector that had come off the starter solenoid. Now, on the Megane with its transverse engine, this is located at the back of the engine against the bulkhead. You can't really see it clearly from above, and without any ramps you've not much chance of getting to it from underneath as well. Fumbling around blindly, we did manage to resolve the issue, but not before the session had ended. So I would like to say a big thank you to Paul and Jason for helping me out, because not only was it the hill climb session at stake, but the 200-mile journey back home as well. By this point I was also starting to suffer the effects of the heat. I did feel a little bit like I was in the early stages of heat stroke, despite having had sun cream, a hat and having drank plenty of water throughout the morning. A lot of the vehicles were starting to leave as well, so sadly there's a lot of cars I just didn't get to cover, such as the Delage and some of the Peugeots as well. I did manage to catch up with my friend Justin with his Peugeot 406, but it would have been nice to have had a good look around the vehicles that some of these other clubs had on display. I will of course leave a link at the end of this video to the 2023 Brooklands French Day, where I did manage to cover a lot more, so if you haven't seen it already you may wish to check it out. As for the venue itself, it's a great place for a day out. There's lots to see. You've got various displays inside the museum, a lot of race cars and motorcycles. They've even got bicycles on display as well, because they did used to hold bicycle races at Brooklands. As well as being a motorsport venue, Brooklands was also an airfield in its past as well, and they've got a great selection of aircraft on display, many of which are actually open to the public, where you can go and have a look around. The site also has a bus museum as well, which again, it's all included in the admission, and it does make for a great family day out if ever you're in the area. As mentioned earlier, if you haven't already done so, please do consider subscribing, and we now also have channel memberships available for the price of a cup of coffee. I will catch you on the next video in the very near future. I'm hoping that I may get to the Weight and Wolds event, which I did last year, which was a good show, and I'm also scheduled to be at Beaulieu for Simply French again this year. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video very soon. It's goodbye from me.